Rabbi Levy, Mrs. Tabin, teachers, parents, distinguished guests, and of course, the class of 2010. Not too long ago, Jews had to choose between the secular and the religious. About a century ago, the Jewish poet Chaim Nachman Bialik watched, horrified, as the Enlightenment in Europe left the famous yeshiva of Volozhin desolate and deserted. In his poem, Al Saf Beit HaMidrash, he offered a solution. Archiva Yireh Kra Lo Chalanai. Let's open the window and rather than reject the secular world outright, recognize the Enlightenment's potential for good and fit it within the framework of our religious lifestyle. North Shore Hebrew Academy High School has successfully achieved Bialik's dream. In North Shore, we've easily reconciled our secular ambitions with our Jewish faith. But fellow graduates, being Jewish is not supposed to be easy. And very soon it won't be. When we go off to college, people all around us will call our religion ridiculous, our nation a nation of murderers and aggressors. And when everything about our identity is called into question, it'll be really easy for us to agree with them, to surrender our own identity, to abandon our own belief system, to let our own voice, the voice of truth and faith, be drowned out by the much louder voices of bigotry and hatred. Sociologists and psychologists call this internalized oppression. It's when Jews respond to criticism with self-doubt, when Jews begin to compromise what they know is true in order to appease their detractors. When the status of Jerusalem suddenly becomes negotiable, when keeping kosher becomes antiquated ritual, all because other people told you so. This ambivalence may seem like a good compromise, or at least a way to avoid conflict, but in reality it constitutes the single greatest existential threat to the Jewish people in the 21st century. Fellow graduates, this threat is far from new. We saw the same ambivalence in the parsha we read last Shabbat. 12 righteous men, the tribal leaders of Israel, are sent to scout out the land, yet only two, Yehoshua and Kalev, remained loyal to God at the end. All 12 spies saw the same objective facts. The Canaanite cities were heavily fortified and armed, and it's not hard to understand why. Canaan was not a nation, but a collection of city-states with no center of authority or unity of purpose that could produce an army to defend them. They needed to build fortresses because they fought among themselves. They were fragmented and insecure. That's why in Sefer Yehoshua, Israel was later able to conquer them one city at a time without ever encountering a coalition of Canaanite forces opposing them. Now all this is clear to us and would be clear to any level-headed, intelligent observer of the Canaanite geopolitical situation. And two of the spies did see the situation that way. Yehoshua and Kalev realized that the Canaanites were no match for a united Israelite army with a strong faith and resolve. So what about the other 10 spies? They must have realized that the Israelites' strong commitment would guarantee them victory. The only possibility then is that the other 10 spies, representing the sentiments of many Israelites, couldn't or were not willing to muster the strong faith and resolve that would bring victory. So what was the premise underlying their subversive report? It wasn't about the magnitude of the Canaanite threat itself, but it was Israel's unwillingness to wholeheartedly embrace their faith. The problem seems all too familiar to us modern observers. And fellow graduates, it should come as no surprise that the symptoms of internalized oppression also appear in the spies' account. In the middle of their report, the spies tell Israel about the giants in Canaan and that they felt like grasshoppers in comparison, as Mr. Kaufman mentioned earlier. Which is reasonable. They're spies and it's their job to relay the facts and how they felt. Then they follow with a more insidious assessment. V'chein hayinu b'einehem. This is how we appeared in the Canaanites' eyes. Now they're telling or guessing how they must have appeared to the Canaanites. The Gemara in Sota, Daf 35a, challenges the spies on this point, asking how could they know for sure how the giants saw them? I have a different question for the spies. Why should that even matter? Why should our enemy's impression of us influence our opinion of ourselves? That's not objective reporting. That's defeatism. And our people can't ever afford to be defeatist. Yet, ambivalence among our ranks and the concomitant psychology of internalized oppression still threaten our survival today. Fellow graduates, our nation has endured over 3,000 years because of Jews who felt passionately about their beliefs. Like your parents, they didn't send us to yeshiva for up to 13 years because their faith was a matter of casual convenience. And our grandparents, whether survivors of the Shoah or refugees from their oppressors in Tehran or Mashhad, they weren't ambivalent about their faith. They were ready to die in God's name rather than renounce it. That's not ambivalence. That's commitment. Unshakable commitment. At North Shore, we were constantly surrounded by supportive rebellion, vigilant administrators, and we didn't need an unshakable commitment to stay religious. Just like when the Israelites wandered through the desert, they may have complained and sinned a few times, but until the sin of the spies, they never rejected their destiny, the basis of the Exodus. Chayta Egel, the sin of the golden calf, that was an egregious misunderstanding of the nature of God. But it wasn't a rejection of their mission as his chosen people. So why didn't they reject their faith in the desert? The answer is simple. There was no faith to reject. For them, just like for us in yeshiva, Judaism wasn't faith, it was fate. Judaism fed them every day in the form of man. Judaism prevented desert snakes and scorpions from attacking them. That's not faith. Famous Medrash about Har Sinai, in which God raises Mount Sinai over the heads of the people and coerces them into accepting Judaism. Everyone finds this metaphor so puzzling, but we graduates know exactly what it's talking about. We had a mountain raised over our heads each morning when the school took attendance at davening. Every time the school gave us grades in our Judaic studies classes. In last week's Parsha, Israel had the opportunity to prove themselves, to show they can maintain their faith in God outside the surreal protected environment of the Midbar, to make their religion of fate a religion of faith. When they sinned at this crucial threshold, the generation of Sinai abdicated its role in the spiritual revolution that began with the Exodus. Fellow graduates, the Torah's account of Israel's journey through the desert is a larger metaphor for Jewish experience of exile and redemption, tragedy and triumph. Our people, though scattered and traumatized, always saw human history as a journey, and they never stopped traveling and searching. We see our grandparents' sacrifices, our parents' earnest efforts. They were for us, to give us the chance to continue fulfilling the Jews' ultimate mission. This is our people, our heritage, our God. Preserve our faith, and it will preserve us. Good luck.